What's the worst part about being replaced? It's when they smile while doing it. My name is Olivia Lane, 42, head of operations at Claris, a fast-growing startup. They didn't even let me finish my coffee. I was 3 sips in when Damon, our fearless CEO, called me into the glass conference room that overlooked the entire floor. My team smiled at me as I passed. Some waved. One of them, Tasha, even-mouthed "kill it," thinking I was heading into another strategy meeting. But the moment I stepped inside and saw HR sitting there with a folder and a fake smile, I knew. 13 years gone in under 13 minutes. "We're restructuring," Damon said, as if that explained everything. "Your contributions have been incredible, Olivia, but we're pivoting to a leaner, younger leadership model." Younger. That word hit harder than fired. I kept my face neutral, nodded slowly, even thanked him for the opportunity. HR handed me the severance package like she was giving me a scented candle. I signed it with the same pen I'd used to build the company's first operations manual back when we worked out of a co-working space with 1 bathroom and no printer. As I stood up to leave, Damon cleared his throat. "Actually, would you mind staying just 5 more minutes?" he asked. I should have walked. I should have slammed the door, flipped the table. Anything but what I did. I nodded. I stood by the wall like some relic as the rest of the execs walked in. Board members, department heads, even a couple of interns pretending they had somewhere to be. Then he introduced her. "Kara will be stepping into Olivia's role starting next week," Damon announced, grinning like he'd just handed out a scholarship. Kara, 28, bright, ambitious. She shadowed me during her first internship here. I taught her everything: how to build workflows, manage vendor contracts, lead calmly during chaos. She used to call me her career mom. Now, she avoided eye contact. Someone from the board asked Kara a routine question, something about Q3 projections for the new rollout. She stammered, glanced at Damon, fumbled through a vague answer about synergies and realigning KPIs. The board member blinked. "So, you don't know?" She laughed nervously. "Not yet, but I'll learn." Damon chuckled, trying to move things along. "We're all learning, aren't we?" No, we weren't. I had learned already. Built the playbook they were now handing to someone still reading the table of contents. I left quietly. No speech. No cake. Just a lukewarm goodbye and a box of things that didn't matter anymore. The walk to the parking lot felt longer than usual. I didn't cry. Not because I wasn't hurt. I just hadn't found the time for it yet. I sat in my car, gripping the steering wheel like it was the only thing keeping me from flying apart. You'd think the story ends there. It should have. But stories like mine don't end. They pause. 2 weeks went by. No calls. No updates. Just silence. I filled my time with long walks, homemade pasta, and trying to remember who I was outside of being Olivia from Ops. I started to feel human again, until a message popped up on my phone at 8:03 p.m. on a rainy Tuesday. "Hey, can we talk? It's about the quarterly reports." It was from Kara. The same Kara who avoided my eyes the day she took my job. The same Kara who said nothing while they erased me. Now she wanted to talk. I stared at the screen for a long time, debating whether to reply. Because one thing was clear. They hadn't just fired me. They fired the only person who actually knew how to make that place run. You know, the thing about making a company run like clockwork is, when you're gone, the gears jam. I didn't reply to Kara's message. I stared at it for a minute, then tossed my phone on the couch and went back to sautéing onions for my new obsession, chicken marsala from scratch. Because I wasn't going back. Not to them. Not to that building. Not to that smug, polished smile Damon wore as he handed my life's work to someone who couldn't find the file drive without a laminated cheat sheet. I thought that would be the end of it. Until 3 days later, my phone lit up again. Damon. Subject. Follow-up. No greeting. No small talk. Just, We've run into a few hiccups with the Q3 systems. If you're available for a short consult, let me know. Of course, we'll compensate you for your time." I almost laughed. Hiccups? That's what he called losing 3 department heads in a week. That's what he called investors breathing down their necks over missing data, late reports, and a boardroom full of blank stares? I hadn't heard the full details yet, but then I got a call. From Tasha. She didn't even say hi, just whispered, "They're blaming us, Liv." I stood completely still. They're saying we didn't document our processes, that the mess we're in is because your systems were too complicated to maintain. Her voice cracked. They're tearing the team apart to protect Kara. My stomach turned. I spent 13 years designing workflows so smooth, the entire ops floor could have run on autopilot. Every detail documented, every emergency playbook mapped. I trained Kara, gave her everything, and now she was letting my people take the fall. That's when I realized this wasn't just about me anymore. It was about the team I left behind. I opened Damon's email, reread it twice. Then I typed, "Send the terms." The next day, an NDA hit my inbox. They were offering double my former salary, for consulting only. No meetings, no public contact, everything behind the scenes. Just a few internal systems fixes. I agreed on one condition. I worked from home. And I worked alone. Damon didn't even push back. He just said, "Welcome aboard, Olivia." I logged in for the first time at 9 a.m. on Monday, and what I saw was beautiful chaos, broken automations, misfiled vendor contracts, approval chains rerouted through the wrong departments, payroll pending, performance reviews stalled, legal flags ignored. I spent the next 4 hours just undoing damage. Kara had renamed folders, deleted half the backup logs, and reset access to systems she didn't understand. She was trying to modernize a machine she didn't even know how to operate. And while I fixed things, the requests kept pouring in. A VP couldn't generate an invoice. HR couldn't onboard new hires. The board was demanding answers no one could give. I didn't reply to any of them directly. I just did what I always did, quietly made things work again. But one message caught my attention. It was a forwarded investor email. Subject line, "Confidence shaken." Inside, a blunt sentence. "It's clear your current leadership team is not prepared for scale." Ouch. Have you subscribed to our channel yet? Hit that subscribe button and the notification bell so you don't miss any of our upcoming videos. I made myself a cup of tea that night and sat on the patio in my robe. I should have felt vindicated. Instead, I felt protective. Not of Damon, not of Kara, of the house I helped build. They didn't just fire me. They amputated their backbone and expected the limbs to move on their own. And now, they were collapsing in real time. That's when another email came through. From Damon again. Subject, proposal. "Olivia, let's discuss something more permanent. We'd like to retain you for a longer-term advisory role. You set the foundation for everything we have. Let's make it official. NDA still applies. Compensation will be revised accordingly." And just like that, the man who said I was too old, too expensive, and replaceable was now offering me a contract he couldn't afford not to. But this time, I wasn't just here to help. I was here to watch it all unravel. They thought I'd crawl back. I walked in like I owned the place. Except I didn't walk into the building. Not physically. I walked in through back-end systems, through buried reports, error logs, workflows they'd broken and tried to glue back together. I accepted Damon's offer, but on one condition. No meetings, no Zoom calls, no recognition, only email. I didn't want credit. I wanted access. I wanted to see everything. The first thing I did, restore full admin control. They'd tried to patch the systems without me, but it was like a toddler using duct tape on a cracked engine block. Files mislabeled, permissions wrong, vendor payment systems teetering. I fixed things slowly, deliberately, and documented every failure I came across. Not for them, for me, a private digital ledger, mistake by mistake, blunder by blunder, each one time-stamped, each one tied to someone's poor decision. 3 days in, Damon started getting friendly. "Olivia, amazing work on the turnaround time. You're really saving us here. Hope you're enjoying this new setup. We're lucky to have you." "Lucky to have me?" That wasn't what he said the day he pushed me out, smiling as Kara stumbled through her intro speech and called Q1 reports Q1. "But sure, let's play nice." Then Kara started, mimicking me. I saw it in the tone of her emails. The language. The urgency she suddenly injected into her messages. She'd found my old templates, the ones I created years ago to brief the board, de-escalate issues, manage crisis comms. Word for word, she was repurposing my voice. And I let her. Because copying is what people do when they're desperate to look like they're in control. Meanwhile, I kept digging. The numbers were weird. Really weird. One invoice approval chain had skipped my original process. The one I built to require dual authentication on anything over $50,000. The system had been manually overridden. Then another file, a vendor payout signed off on by Kara, but the timestamps didn't align with any of her login sessions. I ran a background log check. The signature trail led somewhere else. And when I opened the metadata, it hit me like a punch to the ribs. Signature on the override? Damon Reed. I stared at it for a long time. For years, I thought Damon was just arrogant, smooth-talking, a risk-taker who liked cutting corners for growth. But this was fraud. Worse, it was strategic. These weren't mistakes. They were cover-ups. He was using Kara's name as a buffer, while quietly bleeding money into projects the board never approved. I didn't tell anyone. Not yet. Instead, I opened a fresh folder on my desktop. Read active files. In it, I started building a timeline. Vendor by vendor. Amount by amount. I pulled 6 months of payment data. Isolated every transaction over $25,000. Tracked who approved them and how. I found mismatches. Discrepancies. Even payments that were duplicated. One to the vendor, one to a shell corporation registered under a different name. But the IP logs didn't lie. Damon had signed off on every one. Meanwhile, the praise kept coming. "You're saving the company, Olivia. Kara says she's learning so much from your workflows. We'd be lost without you." Flattery was a poor disguise. They didn't want me back. They needed me. But this time, I wasn't working to keep things together. I was working to build a case. And every email Damon sent? Every time Kara copied my format or phrasing, they were handing me proof that they couldn't operate without me, but were too proud to admit it publicly. On Friday afternoon, I pulled the final trigger. I requested admin access to the board's quarterly summaries, citing a reporting consolidation task. Damon approved it without blinking. And that's when I saw it. $320,000 unaccounted for, buried across 3 departments, all routed back to a consulting firm listed as strategic partners. But the firm didn't exist. At least, not outside of a P.O. box in Delaware. That's when I knew. This wasn't just about ego anymore. Damon hadn't just replaced me. He'd used my exit as a distraction, while he moved money, and he never thought I'd come back far enough to notice. They thought I was just the system whisperer, the fixer, the behind-the-scenes cleanup crew. But I wasn't just fixing what they broke. I was building a paper trail, and at the end of that trail was a signature that would burn everything down. Damon's. I wasn't fired for performance. I was fired to cover up fraud. At first, I thought it was personal. That Damon replaced me because I'd aged out of his boys' club vision. That my loyalty didn't match his optics. But this wasn't personal. It was criminal. I started pulling up the old financials, backups I had stored in an offline archive from before I left. The patterns were almost poetic in their precision. Every shell vendor linked to a phase where Damon pushed for faster growth. Every false payout followed by a reorg or leadership shuffle. And every approval process rerouted, right after I'd implemented safeguards. He'd been slipping through cracks he created. And the final crack was me. I wasn't let go for being obsolete. I was let go because I was the last firewall. The last person who knew how the gears fit. The one person who could trace the fingerprints he tried to bleach out. And when I connected the dots, I realized something even worse. This had been in motion for months. Emails subtly rerouted. Vendor contracts forged. Approvals shuffled into my login queue, then mysteriously reassigned before I saw them. It was a chessboard, And I was the queen quietly removed before the final move. So I built a report, not a spreadsheet, not a memo, a forensic file, with every manipulated payment, every falsified document, every IP log, every signature Damon forged or misattributed. Then I encrypted it, branded it Project Skeleton, and sent it to just one person, Ellen Marks, board chair. Subject line: for your eyes only, urgent security breach. I didn't expect an immediate reply. I didn't need one. But 5 minutes after I hit send, my phone lit up. Unknown number. I let it ring once, twice. Then it buzzed again, this time a text. We need to talk. Urgent. Damon. No emojis. No fake charm. Just urgency. He knew. I didn't reply. Not until the next morning, when I got the calendar invite. Meeting with board 10 a.m. HQ mandatory. No subject line. No agenda. But the location? The executive boardroom. I'd been in there a dozen times during my career. It always smelled of lemon polish and panic. The kind of room where careers ended with a smile and a handshake. I dressed like I used to when I was still respected. Sleek black slacks, navy blouse, no nonsense. And I walked in like I owned the floor. HR was already there. Legal too. And Damon? He was sweating. Not a nervous dab on the forehead kind of sweat. The kind that soaks through your tailored shirt because you don't know how much someone knows. Or what they'll say next. His eyes met mine. Wide. Dark. Silent. He opened his mouth, probably to spin. To explain. To lie. But before he could speak, the door behind me opened. Ellen Marks walked in, board chair, gray suit, steel face. She didn't shake Damon's hand. Didn't look at HR. She dropped a thick folder onto the table. It was labeled Project Skeleton. He thought firing me erased the trail. But all he did was give me time to follow it. And now, the evidence was louder than his lies. Because this boardroom wasn't my execution. It was his. You called me past my prime, but this is the prime of my power. The board didn't speak for a full minute after the evidence was laid out. Not when the signatures were compared. Not when the shell invoices scrolled across the screen. Not even when Ellen looked Damon in the eye and said, "How long have you been stealing from your own people?" He didn't answer. He didn't have to. Because by then, the truth wasn't a secret, it was a storm. The next day, Damon Reed was placed on administrative leave. By the end of the week, he was being sued for corporate fraud and breach of fiduciary duty. 2 shell vendors turned state's witnesses. His growth story unraveled like cheap thread. But that wasn't the satisfying part. No, the real power came when the board turned to me and asked, "Can you fix this?" I didn't hesitate. First order of business? A full forensic audit. Line by line. I brought in my own compliance team. People who knew integrity wasn't a buzzword. Second, I cleaned house. No more cronies. No more yes men. No more ego hires who folded under pressure. The 28-year-old they brought in to replace me? She resigned quietly. I didn't gloat. I didn't need to. Some lessons teach themselves. Third, I called back the people Damon had sidelined. The analysts with institutional memory. The engineers who knew the systems blindfolded. The managers who'd held it all together while being overlooked. And you know what happened? The company came back to life. Morale soared. Clients returned. Investors who once ghosted us started scheduling meetings again. Revenue didn't just rebound, it skyrocketed. Because when you take care of people, they take care of the mission. A month later, I got the offer. Permanent CEO. Stock options. Blank check. I smiled. Because once upon a time, I might have said yes. I might have tied my worth to a title. Let their apology seduce me into staying. But I wasn't that woman anymore. I didn't want to inherit the mess. I wanted to build something of my own, from the ground up. So I declined. Gracefully. Firmly. Finally. Now, I run my own leadership firm. We train founders and execs on how to build companies that don't run on egos or exploitation, but vision and integrity. We teach them that loyalty isn't free, it's earned. And legacy isn't about being irreplaceable. It's about being unforgettable. They thought they replaced me, but all they did was remind me who I am. Not a title, not a cog, not a number on a payroll. I was the backbone. Now I'm the blueprint. Here are some questions for you, our viewers. Have you ever been underestimated at work, only to prove them wrong? Share your story. Do you think Olivia made the right choice by declining the CEO role? Why or why not? What would you have done if you were fired and then asked to come back? Share your thoughts with us in the comments section. Hit the like button, subscribe to our channel, and turn on the notification bell because we have more stories coming up just for you.